Hey, good evening and welcome to Gender Speaker Live. I hope you've had a fabulous Christmas. And today I'm talking to a colleague and friend from the Professional Speaking Association who's also a diversity expert. So we're going to be diving deep into issues of diversity. So welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to Jackie Handy. Hi, Jackie. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Ricky. Thanks for having me.
Christmas?
Had a lovely Christmas, thank you. Yeah, it's, nice and quiet, but...
It was very quiet, wasn't it, this year?
Yeah.
I keep looking at all the stuff out there and thinking it's a dangerous world out there. I think we'll just stay here.
Absolutely. I'm with you there.
So I've been trawling through your website and various other things, and we've obviously got to know each other through the our coffee conversation weekly meetings with the Professional Speaking Association. Yeah. So how long have you been in the PSA, just as a matter of interest?
So it will be 3 years in February.
Wow.
Yeah, in February. So, I went for a couple of visits, as a guest, as a visitor before committing to join. But I loved it. I loved the environment. I loved the people within it. That's really what made it. And also the things I could learn I thought were valuable. So I joined up February 3 years ago, yeah.
I mean, this is the fabulous thing about the PSA is that it, and the speaking industry across the world, is that even if, like you and I, we could easily be competing for the same work, and yet we spend time with each other, sharing ideas and helping each other, which is a fabulous support group.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I love about it. I mean, some people call it a tribe, a family, whatever, but I just think it's a lovely group of like-minded people that get it, that get the challenges, and we were just talking about the tech challenges that we've all faced this year, more so than ever. And, we're there to support each other through, aren't we? Where we can.
Yeah, and I think that has been really important, because in order for us to get messages out and talk to people, we've got to learn to become broadcasters and presenters and speakers, and a whole range of new skills that we've now got to bring in.
Absolutely.
So I was looking through your thing. So you're basically I put you a diversity and inclusion expert. What got you to being an inclusion expert?
Well,
in the whole field.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long old story, and I know we don't have 3 days for this, so I'll give you the sort of diluted version, if you like. But I think predominantly I have a lived experience, as many diversity and inclusion speakers, trainers, and so forth have. So I have a lived experience as a lesbian woman growing up. I'd been bullied as a child, actually, as a young child, because I had an affliction which meant that one of my eyes turned inwards, and so I got bullied because of my differences. And I was bullied again in my teens when people started to realize that I was different again, and so I kind of empathize with the challenges, if you like, in society that go along with difference. And or at least some of them. I don't profess to be the expert from everybody's map of the world, wrong side, there we are, map of the world. But ultimately, I have an empathy from my own experience. And then from my corporate background, so I've done many things, and I've been everything from a holiday rep, worked in a pub, the usual stuff. But also I spent 15 years in recruitment, and that much of which was in the closet, by the way, because I didn't want to be sort of overlooked for promotion and that kind of thing. And
I'd like to just pause on that one for a second, because I've been doing some work for a Swiss company, international company, and they were wanting me to talk about the whole idea of covering, of how you have to constantly be on your guard if you're not out, and how many, even today, and you'd think after a decade of the Equality Act in the UK, we'd have sort of cracked it. I've always said, changing laws is it's tough, but actually quite simple in comparison to changing attitudes. Because although we've had the Equal Pay Act now for 50 years, and we still don't have anywhere close to equal pay. We've had so much change took place during the noughties, from from about 1999 when it became illegal to sack trans people just because they were trans, right the way through to the Equality Act, and yet still we're battling, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm even now I'm telling that story. I'm going back. Gosh, well, I started in recruitment in 1998. And I left recruitment in 2014. So I now support recruiters and so forth as part of my work, but certainly from the corporate world, I left in that time. So over all those years, I never actually officially came out of the closet until I met my now wife, and that was 13 years ago. So where are we now? I lose track. 2020. So we're talking 2020, 90, I don't know what date, but anyway. But the point being, I'd chosen actually to stay in the closet, and there were people that suspected, of course, but I'd chosen to stay in the closet because of a fear of repetition, history repeating itself, from when I was 5 and being picked on and laughed at and called names and excluded from games in the street, as a small child, to being picked on in my teens and, fingers pointed and names called and, again, feeling that exclusion and that fear that comes with that exclusion. And so I'd made a conscious choice, really, to hold back on what actually is a big part of oneself, is one's identity and, and one's private life that we often share snippets of at work. But I found that I was very much, dampening down those things. And that's that covering that you refer to. People would say, you've done much at the weekend. And I'd say things like, oh, not a lot, or, just seen a few friends, and kept it very generic. And you realize when you look back, God, it's draining, actually. It's draining because you don't want to lie. But you feel like you're lying because you're omitting some of the truth. And a big part of that is related to your authentic self. And that doesn't feel nice, to do that. But it feels almost a necessity and a safety mechanism that we have for ourselves. And, when I also think back, Ricky, I think, well, to be honest, I think the organisation that I worked for sort of 12 and a half years, a great organisation, probably the vast majority of people within it would have been totally okay. And indeed, those that then knew latterly were, in the main, okay. But it's almost like we protect others because when by hiding part of who we are, because you could argue that, well, actually I am who I am, take it or leave it, I'm not hurting anyone. And that's the whole thing about gender and gender identity, is that it doesn't hurt anyone. And but it hurts us to hold back.
I think one of the challenges, I was 52 when I came out, and I had really, really just stayed desperately in the closet. And it wasn't until I come out, and once you're out, you're out. Right. It's one of those things, isn't it? The genie's out of the bottle. There's no way to put it back. So if you're going to be out, you might as well be out. Big time. Okay. That was my sort of sense. Yeah, there was no way to do this quietly. So you might as well do it loud and proud and just think, right, this is who I am. I was doing lots of articles. I was quite well known. I just set up the PSA a couple of years previously. So, yeah, I was very well known, not just in the UK, but internationally. So when I came out, I just had to do it big time. And I made a lot of mistakes. And I did discover that there were people who really couldn't handle that.
Yeah,
I saw them, and I very quickly learned that I'd come up to someone, and I remember a conversation. I went to a NSA meeting, and somebody said, "Do I know you?" And I said, "Do you remember Richard Aaron?" "Oh yeah. Are you his wife?" And I'd say, "No, actually, it's me." And some of them would go, "Oh, amazing!" They give me a big hug, and others would go, "Oh, really?" and step back.
Right.
So I find this very odd thing where some people just couldn't handle it at all. Yeah. And I had very little contact after that again. Others thought this was absolutely amazing, wanted to introduce them to all their friends and wanted to network with me. And so there was this weird strangeness that suddenly being out meant people really knew who I was.
Mm.
I noticed your keynote is the power of I.
That's right. Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a bit about your keynote and what?
Yeah, well, I think you sort of said, how did I get into speaking? And it was that personal journey that got me into speaking, really. I moved into learning and development, and somebody introduced me to the PSA, the Professional Speaking Association, as I mentioned, 3+ years ago. And so I started almost by accident, actually. I initially had a crack at talking about something else, and somebody said, maybe there's quite a bit of competition in that particular area that I'd chosen, and could you speak about something else because you've got some talent there? And I said, well, and I was thinking, I thought, blimey, what can I really speak authentically about? And I thought, obviously, my own journey and what that's meant to me and what I think people can take from it to make the world a better place, if you like. So I did. I started talking about that. I then did a TEDx, which is called the exclusive nature of inclusion, and from there, that's really kind of taken me into more of a speaking world. And I still do a lot of training and consultancy as well. But the power of I is really what's evolved from that speaking journey. And as I've been working more in corporate around and seeing what's looked at, really, what's focused on in terms of the diversity and inclusion space, it appears that there's positive intention there, but the execution is sometimes a bit hit and miss. It may be programs aren't gaining traction. We know, don't we? I know that you will agree with this, that there's a lot of organizations out there that are doing a lot on unconscious bias and then not really anything else. So therefore that just doesn't work. And so the power of I is really about the small steps that we can all take. So it's the power that I have to make a difference. And of course, it represents the power of inclusion. So I really believe that, if every single person on the planet committed just to taking one step towards a more inclusive world, then we would already be in a better place. And when you break it down like that, it's like anything. You talk about goals and so forth. You break it down into manageable chunks, it becomes much more attainable. And the same thing applies with an inclusive culture.
And are those steps? Those are the sorts of things that you've put into your book, the little book of belonging. Yeah. Yeah,
I'm loving the little sort of taglines coming up as well. Thank you. So my little book of belonging, you might be able to just see it on the shelf there. I'll give it a bit of a zoom in, shall I? You've been kind enough to mention it. So I put this together actually this year. A lot of people say, hey, learn to play the ukulele or whatever. I put together a book, and because it's a wire-bound book, it's not sort of on Amazon. They don't publish it out, so it's only on my website. So that's where you'll find it if you want to get it. It's a book with a difference because it's really I'll just give you a sort of flavour of it, but there's just one totally at random. So that's a reflection that somebody could have one week. So how could admitting my fears and imperfections help me to grow? And there's a lovely little quote on the other side: to be vulnerable is to brave. And that's just one. There's 52 of these questions and reflections in the book. I intended to be one for every week of the year. And they focus on what I would say are my 12 core behaviors. And these are behaviors, Ricky, that we exhibit every day. So these are not sort of alien, brand new, exclusively for diversity and inclusion behaviors. These are things like understanding. These are things like education and observation. So these are simple behaviors, but with a focus on inclusion. So I'll just give you a brief, if I may, just so, for example, understanding, there may be, this is about almost being mindful of, dare I say, the boxes. I mean, I hate the boxes really, but but be mindful of what the boxes may mean to someone, but not identifying them by the box. So in other words, getting to understand the person in front of you as a fellow human being, regardless of any other box that they may or may not sit in. To understand deeply their value systems and belief systems, their needs, their wants and their desires, so that in life, but also, of course, importantly in business, we can then seek to create an environment that supports that and gets the best from that individual so that they can thrive and feel like they belong, which is the whole point, right?
I'll share a small story on this one that of when I first, I was completely in the closet in 1995, and I attended my first ever National Speakers Association convention in Minneapolis. And that was stunning. I mean, this was like 2,500 speakers, and some of the people I'd grown up with, my great heroes, Tony Alexandra and Zig Ziglar and people like that. And suddenly I'm having lunch with them like they're long lost friends, and I think it's just amazing. And there were only about 6 people in the UK in the speaking association, and one of them, Alan Lord, said, "You got to meet W. Mitchell." And I said, right, okay, fine. So he took me over to this guy and introduced me. And I took one look and I thought, what the hell do I do now? Here, sitting in a wheelchair in front of me, is a man who is a patchwork quilt of a man whose face had been put together on a photograph in the hope that he could get somewhere close to what he used to look like. His hands were like stubs, which one extended towards me. And I thought, do I shake? What do I do? And it is, you can't not see somebody that different. And he said, Rick, sit down. Come in. And he, in the next 15 minutes, told me his story about the motorcycle accident that resulted in the burns, the plane crash that resulted in breaking his back, and his life as a speaker and what he does. And suddenly what happened was all of the physical side of him just melted away. And this awesome human being shone through in a way that I'd never experienced before. And he suddenly taught me something which helped me to come out, because he taught me that you can't let other people be responsible for coping with sudden change that they've never seen. You have to take responsibility for helping them to adjust to it. And I thought, oh my God. So it isn't just about sort of saying, well, you should accept the fact that I'm trans, or you should accept I'm gay. No. If you have not been if you've not grown up in a culture where it's acceptable, then we have to take that responsibility, saying, look, let me help you understand where I am. And absolutely. Which is exactly what you're doing, exactly what Mitchell did for me. And I'm not sure without that experience whether I would have come out at the time that I did. It was.
Wow. It's amazing, isn't it? The seemingly small acts or words that you hear that just have profound impacts on your life, and I think it's important to recognise that that can work both ways. So it can be a very positive impact that lasts with you a long time, a lifetime perhaps, or it can also be a very sort of limiting or negative impact. So I don't just focus on the behaviours, but I focus on the language as well, to make sure that it's the old sticks and stones, and words will never hurt me. But I mean, something's wrong there, because words can really hurt. They do matter. And I think it's important that we don't, it's finding that line between becoming the so-called PC brigade that people seem extremely offended by, but also to again, help those people understand. One of the other behaviours that I refer to is education, and it's about educating ourselves, but it's also about educating others. And as you mentioned there, that two-way responsibility really to help create that environment for people. And the same applies with with words and obviously things like pronouns, but also you talked about your encounter then, and I say, well, there are some people that would say, I don't describe myself as having a disability. I'm not disabled, but I live with this, and or whatever it is. And I remember I think it's important really to say that just because we work in this space doesn't mean we're sort of perfect in it. And I make mistakes, constantly. Well, less constantly now, but I remember posting something that said, if you're something about if you're suffering with this disability or suffering with this illness. And somebody corrected me, Roland Chester's actually corrected me, and I thank him for this because it was a subtle thing that says, he basically said, I don't suffer with, or people don't always suffer with, what they may have, but instead they live with it and they create a life around it. And that is so powerful as well, because again, this map behind me represents that we all have a unique perspective on the world. We all have our own unique map. And so it's about us working to step into the world of somebody else as much as possible with that positive intention of understanding.
My partner has ME, and very few people understand what that means because it's an invisible illness.
Right.
And of course, what we've suddenly been seeing recently is people who've had COVID suddenly saying, I'm exhausted, I can't cope, I can barely walk. And the symptoms of COVID long are exactly the same as the symptoms of ME. And almost everybody who has ME has probably had glandular fever, swine fever, or some kind of viral-based infection. So there's a very clear sense that these are, now at the moment the government won't connect these up, but it's a huge problem for people with an invisible disability, for example. In exactly the same way that, your difference is an invisible one, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And most of the time people just see me. It's not until I talk they go, oh my God, it's a man. And that's when I get all sorts of weird stuff because suddenly I don't fit the stereotype.
Yeah.
I think this is the real big challenge.
And I nodded because I have a cousin who also has ME. So, I've been thinking exactly the same recently about the long COVID symptoms, by the way. So, I understand in relation to that. But, you're right. I think a lot of what I think is interesting and, again, needs that additional empathy in order to create more inclusion in the world is, there are some differences that are, if you like, yes, invisible. So unless somebody may well look and go, oh, short hair, got a shirt on or whatever, perhaps a lesbian, but perhaps and perhaps not. So who knows? So it's not really unless I choose to tell somebody that they would absolutely know, although of course they knew my work and so on. But if I was of color, person of color, black, or again, one chooses language carefully because different people identify differently. But that is of course out there. It's immediately visible. It's immediately apparent. The same as somebody in a wheelchair. It's immediately apparent, and so there are different. It's that intersectional challenges, aren't there, that come with that. That again, as a society, we have to become more and more mindful of in order to ensure that the everything really that we're saying and doing is with positive intention. We will make mistakes, but
you're talking about people of color, and I did training with Jane Elliott. You may have heard of Jane Elliott, the Brown. Brilliant. I mean, wow, my God, what a powerful woman! What a powerful woman! Scares the life out of everybody, and she actually has to have armed guards when she's doing her program in the States because the race issue is such a big issue. And she's
very divisive
in her 80s now, so it's not something that she regularly does. But she taught me so much about the way in which people react and seeing those very negative reactions and quite frightening.
Oh, most definitely, and I think again, when we sort of backtrack a little bit to May and the murder of George Floyd and how that kind of elevated the Black Lives Matter movement once again, I think a lot of people thought that this had just come out of the woodwork on the back of it, rather than it was something that had been around for a long time. But I think then you started hearing terms about like white supremacy and so forth, and privilege, and people getting very mixed up with what these terms A meant and B what to do about them, and I think that caused a lot of defensiveness for people, I remember seeing somebody. And it was pretty cringeworthy, but again, the intention was positive. Who said, I don't have privilege. This was a white woman, and who said, I don't have privilege. I grew up in hardship and so on and so forth. And it's like, no, you're missing the point. That is a type of privilege, but it's not the type of privilege we're talking about here. So, I think again, here goes back to that education piece, and. Even at that time, I picked up the Me and White Supremacy book by Layla Saad, which is so powerful, and read that through just to be real crystal clear as to the terminology, what it meant, how to leverage, how to recognize my own innate flaws, if you like, but also then to know how to leverage the positivity around it through the work that I was doing. So I think the education piece continues, and it must continue.
I did I've taken quite a number of the Harvard Implicit Association tests, and I did the one on gender, and I thought, well, now I'm pretty sorted on gender now. And no, I was absolutely and completely biased towards men and careers, women and family, and just thought, oh my God. But then when I did the LGBT one, I found that I'd overdone it. And I realized what was happening when I went on recruitment panels and things. If somebody was gay or trans or lesbian, then I would immediately say, right, we'll recruit them.
Yeah.
And my bias had gone way the wrong way. So I was now biased against anybody who was straight.
Yeah.
So I had to back away but this is the whole thing, isn't it? Once we understand our biases, once we understand our challenges, and, we still all have, I have had some uncomfortable experiences with some people from Africa, and it is very easy for that to become a stereotype.
Right, absolutely, of course, and and I think you raise a good point, which leads us into that whole, this. Let's not any of us persecute the white man, right? The white straight man. There's a place for everyone in this world, or there should be a place for everyone in this world, and I think you're right. In terms of the I've gone too far the wrong way, as you referred to it. Maybe it's not the wrong way, but it's that whole in-crowd thing, isn't it? It's like for like.
Absolutely,
That's what it is.
Social identity stuff. The first speech I did at the PSA after I'd come out was I decided I was going to try and do some stand-up comedy and stuff. I am not good at stand-up comedy, but I stupidly thought that this might be a route that I could take to laugh at myself and typical British approach to deprecating. I came off and somebody said, bit man-hating that, and I thought, oh,
yeah.
I had gone to the deal. I used to be a man, so I can pick on them. And
yeah, but I bet it was a man that said that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It took me probably 2 or 3 years to learn how to behave in a way that didn't immediately flag up reactions that were negative. I don't think people understand just how different our socialization is as men and women. There's just so many things that are built in from the moment we're born. We're constantly having this pressure put on us to conform to a stereotype of what it means to be male, what it means to be female. And here we are in a world that's saying, hey, what about the middle ground? What about in the middle? And more and more of us are now saying, look, I'm just in the middle. I'm somewhere between male and female, not quite the same as And that's probably more where my work has been going than anywhere else. I see the dog.
Guest appearance from Barnaby there. He'll be wanting his dinner soon. But yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because, you get people who say things like, oh, there wasn't all this back in my day. All this, changing gender and lesbian and gay and bisexual and this sexual and that sexual, and all the rest of it. But of course there was. Of course there was. This is, it's like we're not a whole different society of people. We're just understanding it more, and that is the step to a society that's, I guess, I hope, based on increased freedom for people, increased kindness and love for people. And that really is what I think inclusion is. It's that unconditional love for a fellow human being.
It's going to take us a while, but that hard step we've got to take is where I just see you as a person, not male or female, but as a person. And it was interesting. I was on this panel. I suddenly looked and found out that man and woman are two separate words in every different European language. Uomo, donna, man, Frau. But person is the same in every single language. Might be pronounced slightly differently, but actually, if you read through anything that's German or Spanish or Italian or French or English, the word person is the same. Might be persona, might be person, but might pronounce it slightly different. It's the same word. Where masculine, feminine, those are very different. And I thought that's quite interesting there. That even though our languages are very dominated into male, female, and the sort of gender roles that are associated, somehow we've actually got to help people to break that through and think, no, people are people, and you just accept people for who they are without any reference. It's going to take time. But
that's it. And, I just think, and maybe I'm a slight fantasist or whatever, but, I think overall, I just think this world needs more love and kindness. That's it, and there it goes. And Barnaby agrees. And love and kindness, I think, as I said in one of my earlier comments, people's gender identity doesn't intend to hurt anyone.
No.
But stifling your own gender identity hurts you. And so, or it can hurt you, and it can, therefore, stifling it could hurt people around you. So, I don't know. I just, like you said, it's not enough
fear, Jackie. It's the greater. I've obviously done public speaking training for a long, long time, and particularly as I started to change gender, I started to notice that women struggled more with public speaking than men. I mean, speaking industry itself was like 2/3 men, 1/3.
Yeah.
Women. It's not now. It is that has changed. But I thought, what is it that's going on? And I began to realize that it's this fear of humiliation, fear of somehow being spotlighted, which for women is a bigger problem because women spend their lives often getting spotlighted for totally the wrong reasons. Tend to look at women for how they look, men for for what they do, and that sort of challenge. But I think what I noticed when I changed gender, suddenly I wasn't getting booked. And somebody said to me, even who had booked me, said, I had so much pressure not to book you. And the pressure that I realized that was happening was this fear of humiliation, fear of being laughed at, fear of somehow being ridiculed. And that's what's going on. We faced it. We've dealt with it. We finally come out and braced ourselves for that. But then everybody else who knows us think, oh, my God, I'm going to get laughed at because I know you. I'm going to get laughed at because I'm a friend of. So it's the same fear.
Yeah.
And it's a very real fear because people actually get killed just for being trans, just for being lesbian, just for being with someone who is. So, and it's exactly the same with Black Lives Matter. We still have that underlying fear. Yeah. And we've got to get past that.
It's interesting, because 3.5 years ago, I got married to my long-term partner, and it was one of those things that until marriage equality was available, I wasn't interested. So I didn't want this civil partnership. It was either it was the same or it was nothing. Anyway, we got married, and there were people, and I know this because I do, but there were people who maybe sort of bumped into other people that were sort of people that knew us both and said, "Oh, you'll never guess what, you got married." Or my wife, got married to a woman, and all this. And so there was still these kind of, tittering about something a little bit different. And that was only 3 years ago. So, this stuff is still going on, and it is still harmful. And as you say, there are people that are still, unfortunately, becoming statistics of this. And that's why, I kind of long for the day where I'm no longer needed. My role is redundant, but I intend to continue going for as long as is needed to make a difference.
I watched a lovely film last night, and we came across it just by accident, just flicking through Amazon trying to find something to watch. And there's this film called The Summerland.
Oh, okay.
And I had no idea what it was about. It's all about a young boy who gets basically evacuated from the war and put with a writer, a woman who's writing something, and she absolute fierce. She really, everybody's terrified of her. And through the film, bit by bit, we started to unfold that she had a relationship with another woman. And I'm not going to spoil it for you because I want you to give it a chance.
No,
but
I told you, yeah.
It's such a moving story, a film. At the end of it, I thought, oh my God, what a beautiful film. As this woman slowly starts to get to know the son, and then there is some real twists towards the end that I wasn't expecting at all. And you think, oh my God. And it was a sense of, things that can work out. But it was a wartime relationship at a time when there just was no way for people to be out about that sort of thing.
And that's it. And I think it's important to recognise that, we have as a world made progress. I think, we can't dispute that. But there's still more to do. There's still more to be done. And, that's why the work you do is so valuable, and the work that I do is so valuable, and those like us,
And I will, on that, just remind everybody that they can find you at www.jackiehandy.com. Got that right, haven't I? Yes.
You have. Thanks, Ricky.
And your book is on there. Details of your speaking is on there. Your blog, lots and lots of information. Jackie, it's been absolutely brilliant talking to you. Just hang on a second while I close. There's a couple of things I'm going to be saying, so I'm just going to take you off screen for a minute while I just finish off. You'll be able to find this on my podcast on Gender Speaker Live. Join me again. I should be here again next Wednesday doing a show at 4 p.m. I'm not sure whether I'll be interviewing somebody or talking about LGBT history, but from the 1st of January, I'm starting a new live broadcasting show, and I see I've got a little bit of a problem with the internet there, but all next month, Pep Story is going to be the focus. Every day I'm going to be on live. I think that's going to be at about 3:00. I'm still just trying to work things out on that. I've got a couple of commitments which clash with that, so it might vary a bit during the month, but all through the month, Pep Story Live, and that's going to be tips on how to become an outstanding speaker. So if you follow those through the month, you will learn all sorts of ideas and tips, things I've learned over 40 years of coaching and speaking to help. So thanks very much indeed for being with me. I hope you've enjoyed the show. It's all on YouTube, and for anybody, if you want to share it, and on my Facebook page. So thank you for being with me, and I will just get rid of a few bits here. Look forward to seeing you next Wednesday at 4 p.m. Take care.